Stop saying that Whoopi Goldberg getting yanked from The View right after she attacked me on The View is karma. There's no such thing as karma, sorry. And black people can't afford to indulge rich white people's need to endlessly flagellate themselves. They just want prices to go down and good jobs and the police when you call them.
Bill Maher is out here dismantling woke arguments like it's his personal mission. And this time, his target happens to be none other than Whoopi Goldberg. It all started with a few remarks on The View, remarks that might seem harmless at first glance, until you realize just how far off base they drifted. But the real shocker, Whoopi's comments ignited a back and forth that exposed more than just celebrity feuds. It revealed a deepening cultural divide, highlighting why so many Americans are fed up with what Maher calls the mean girls mentality. Buckle up, because this is not your average celebrity spat. It's a full-blown clash of ideas, and the fallout might just reshape how we view the so-called woke mob.
Well, if he's right, then why didn't people vote for the former prosecutor who actually had policy plans to help the working class?
For years, Bill Maher has been known as the outspoken voice ready to call out political correctness and left-wing hypocrisy. If there's a sacred cow in progressive circles, chances are Maher has grilled it on live television. Most people who tune into his show either love his no-holds-barred commentary or bristle at it, but no one can deny that he keeps the conversation blazing hot.
We have got to get past this endless, unforgiving, zero-tolerance mindset bent on punishing and disappearing anyone caught saying the wrong thing. The right response to speech you don't like is more speech. Sorry, but life is random. The only word to describe it when a big game hunter gets trampled by an elephant and then eaten by lions is hilarious.
Whoopi Goldberg, on the other hand, carries a different aura. She's an award-winning actress, a longtime The View co-host, and a staunch defender of progressive ideals, at least in her eyes. The View itself has become a daytime talk juggernaut by constantly serving up hot topics peppered with fiery, sometimes baffling opinions. Over the years, Whoopi's role on the show has shifted from comedic relief to a kind of moral judge, weighing in on everything from politics to pop culture.
Anything in regards to whether or not his son wanted to be part. He could have said, "Hey man, I'm not focused on that right now." Criticism is valid because Democrats stand on this moral high ground all the time, and they act so self-righteous.
So when these two forces collided, it wasn't exactly a surprise, but the explosive results certainly left watchers stunned. To understand why, we first have to look at the spark, a moment when Whoopi seemed to twist Maher's words, pivoting into a strange tangent about former prosecutors and the working class. One might argue she tried to steer the conversation away from Maher's direct critique of progressive obsessions, like constant self-flagellation over social issues, by pointing fingers at something else entirely. It was enough of a deflection that Maher couldn't help but snap back.
I'm gonna stop you for a second.
Uh-oh.
Only because you don't know that it was a lie. We don't know why he changed
You really think he just changed his mind over Thanksgiving weekend all of a
No,
sudden?
I'm gonna tell you what I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he changed his mind because he got sick of watching everybody else get over.
So what did Whoopi Goldberg actually say? In her attempt to counter Bill Maher's point that many black Americans simply want quality jobs, reasonable prices, and functioning police, she brought up a former prosecutor who apparently had a robust plan for the working class. The logic, however, seemed to fizzle out on arrival. In Maher's eyes, Goldberg's retort was disconnected from his initial argument. He wasn't discussing whether a particular politician had good policies or not. He was calling out certain progressive elites who, in his view, focus more on symbolic gestures, like toppling statues and oversimplifying complex issues, rather than understanding what people genuinely need. When Whoopi latched onto that prosecutorial angle, it came across as a sidestep, almost as if she just needed to say something, anything, to undermine Maher's core statement.
Let's tear down statues of Lincoln and get rid of the police. Just, no. It's not that I've gotten old, it's that your ideas are stupid.
While the View audience might have nodded along out of sheer loyalty, Maher's fans saw it differently. To them, Whoopi's remarks illustrated a common tactic, When someone hits close to a painful truth, deflect by changing the subject. And that's exactly the moment Bill Maher zeroed in on, deciding it was time to hit back. It was no longer a polite disagreement, it was a call out of faulty logic.
Democrats.
But that's their fault. They're the ones that they're the ones that go out there and they stand on this moral high ground. They don't have to do that.
So I'm just gonna follow the straight and narrow always, because that's what's expected of Deb.
When Bill Maher goes after someone's argument, he doesn't pull punches. He shredded Whoopi's stance, labeling some of her ideas nonsensical and calling the View's commentary stupid for missing the point so dramatically. To him, the real problem lies in this vortex of identity politics, where critical thinking has taken a back seat to emotional appeals and buzzwords. Maher also made it clear that Whoopi's detour into discussing a former prosecutor was nothing more than an attempt at misdirection, a classic rhetorical tactic to move away from an uncomfortable spotlight. Instead of explaining why Bill's assessment about black voters or the economy might be flawed, Whoopi essentially conjured a new topic altogether. Maher found a pivot laughable, and he let the world know. Then came his broader critique. The woke mob, as he calls them, seems hell-bent on shutting down discussions that don't align with their worldview. From policing the language people use to pouncing on anyone guilty of wrongthink, Maher believes progressive circles have lost their ability to separate genuine injustice from trivial misstatements. In his words, you love to speak truth to power, but you've completely lost the ability to speak truth to bullshit. Those lines landed like bombs, making it crystal clear he wasn't just talking about Whoopi. He was talking about an entire culture of groupthink.
There's people who really like him. They certainly are those. And then there's people who don't necessarily like him that much, but they still think he's less crazy. There's a coalition of Trump voters. Then stuff that strikes them as aggressively anti-common sense.
To illustrate how deep this hypocrisy runs, Bill Maher brought up something far beyond Whoopi Goldberg's commentary: the Hunter Biden scandal. From Maher's perspective, if Democrats and progressives claim no one is above the law, then what happens when a president's son is found guilty of corrupt behavior and seemingly skates by with minimal consequences? He pointed out how certain media outlets worked over time to bury the Hunter Biden story or label it Russian disinformation, all to protect the political figure they favored. Maher's gripe is that this selective outrage and willful blindness exemplify the very thing many Americans despise about mainstream media. If the wrongdoer were a different political figure's child, the View's panel might have been calling for that politician's head on a silver platter. This double standard isn't an isolated incident. It's part of the pattern that Bill Maher highlights again and again. Progressive voices who consider themselves champions of truth, yet go silent or defend wrongdoing when it's someone from their own circle. Whether it's a shady political scandal or a nonsensical policy, too many are ready to spin or justify it in the name of tribal loyalty. According to Maher, that's the height of hypocrisy, and he's not about to let it slide. Now, how has Whoopi Goldberg typically reacted when criticized? Not gracefully, to say the least. Over the years, The View has become somewhat infamous for shutting down guests or co-hosts who stray too far from the panel's consensus. Critics have described it as a daytime talk show train wreck, painful yet addictive to watch, especially when the hot topics turn messy. Sunny Hostin, another View panelist, once found herself in Maher's crosshairs, leading her to call in some moral support. That's precisely where Whoopi often steps in, championing the show's progressive stance with fervor. The problem is, many viewers see little genuine debate, just a circle of nods, raised eyebrows, and choreographed outrage whenever someone offers a different perspective. It's this pack-like behavior that Bill Maher calls mean girls. Rather than inviting honest discussions, The View can feel more like a synchronized performance of moral superiority. Whoopi's confrontation with Charlemagne the Godover. Hunter Biden's situation was another example. He pointed out the obvious double standard, and Whoopi immediately turned dismissive, almost scolding him on air. Bill Maher took those moments and used them to illustrate exactly why the so-called woke mob is turning off a huge swath of the public. When Maher compares poll numbers, like the number of Black and Hispanic Americans who think the US is the greatest country in the world, he uncovers something mainstream outlets often gloss over. Many minority voters aren't necessarily on board with every progressive talking point. In fact, quite a few align more closely with moderate or even conservative views when it comes to issues like border security or the police. The media portrayal often suggests that certain identity groups are uniformly behind progressive causes. But Maher's data says otherwise. Plenty of people, Black, white, Hispanic, or otherwise, just want common sense solutions. They don't wake up dreaming of revolutionary changes or major political gotcha moments. They want lower prices, a decent job market, safe neighborhoods, and accountability in government. That's where Bill Maher sees a huge disconnect. On one side, everyday Americans who might not feel the need to topple statues or rename entire cities. On the other side, media personalities and woke activists who fixate on symbolic battles, while missing the immediate needs of ordinary folks. It's no shock that when politicians harp on fringe agendas, many voters gravitate to whoever promises to keep things normal, even if that means tolerating a polarizing figure. But let's be honest, Bill Maher's whole approach rests on humor, irony, and an unwavering willingness to mock the ridiculous. That's why when people began claiming Whoopi Goldberg's suspension or any on-air misfortune was karma for coming after Bill, Maher couldn't resist. He mused that life is random. There's no cosmic scoreboard. Sometimes a big game hunter really does get trampled by an elephant and eaten by lions, and it's simply hilarious in Maher's eyes. Whoopi and her co-hosts on The View champion tolerance, yet they don't seem very tolerant of opposing opinions. They love to boast about hearing all sides, but when confronted with viewpoints that poke holes in their worldview, they respond with snark, outrage, or outright dismissal. For Bill Maher, that irony is comedic gold. A group of people who claim inclusivity while slamming the door on real debate. Meanwhile, watchers can't help but feel the comedic tension. If The View was supposed to be a forum for varied perspectives, why does it often come off like a tutorial in groupthink? Maher simply lights a lamp on that corner of hypocrisy, and the results make for riveting, if sometimes cringe-inducing viewing. All of this leads us to a more significant point. The spat between Bill Maher and Whoopi Goldberg is about far more than two famous people trading insults. It reflects an evolving cultural standoff. On one side, a slice of America that's exhausted by the scolding tone of extreme progressivism, and on the other, entrenched voices who refuse to see any flaw in their own tribe. Maher contends that the only path forward is genuine dialogue, calling out absurd claims no matter who utters them, and a willingness to move past partisan blinders. After all, democracy was designed so that sometimes the other team wins, even if you can't stand them. Pretending that every political outcome you dislike is stolen or orchestrated by hidden forces only shreds faith in the system. Perhaps that's why Maher warns that 2028 or 2032 might be even more shocking if certain groups don't wake up to everyday reality. So what does this showdown really teach us? For starters, if you claim to represent openness and tolerance, you'd better be prepared to live by those words, even when someone lobs a stinging critique at your beliefs. Maher's message is simple. Focus on what people genuinely need. Quit the endless obsession with moral grandstanding and try to see the world beyond your own bubble. After all, if the woke mob is too busy silencing dissent to notice the real concerns of average Americans, they might find themselves on the losing side of history. And that wraps up today's take on the jaw-dropping face-off between Bill, Maher, and Whoopi Goldberg. If you found this glimpse into the culture clash eye-opening, give this video a like and stick around for more unfiltered deep dives into the topics nobody else will tackle. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, real tolerance means hearing out opinions you can't stand, even if it hurts a little.